I want to close the podcast with this. A lot has happened over the course of the last 2 or 3 months in terms of roster changes and roster moves and people declaring for the draft and deciding that they're coming back. But I wanted to go through what were maybe like the 5 or 6 most important and most influential decisions that are left to be made. And I'm going to start with one that just happened this week, where reports came out that Jalen Duren, it's not official yet, but reports have come out that Jalen Duren is strongly considering reclassifying into the class of 2021. For people that don't know who he is, he's kind of surpassed Amani Bates as the favorite to be the number one player in the class of 2022. He's a 6'10" athletic specimen that plays the four, really good passer, has a lot of I guess Bam Adebayo is the guy that a lot of people are comparing him to in terms of his athleticism, his defensive versatility, his rim protection, the fact that he's actually a really good passer, the jump shot not really being there. But if he could end up getting into the class of 2021, getting eligible to play in the class of 2021, you're talking about a guy that has a very real chance to be a top 5, top 3, maybe the number 1 pick in the 2022 NBA draft. And he's old enough where he can make that happen if he reclassifies. So I don't know if he'll go to college. It seems like there are some pretty strong links to Kentucky, but for me, that's the number 1 guy on the list, and it's not close.
Yeah, I would look to Columbus because I think that Dwayne Washington and EJ Liddell, what they end up doing is huge for Ohio State and the Big Ten. If those two are in the fold with the Buckeyes, Chris Holtman's team is a top 10 consensus team in the country, if not 5th or 6th in college basketball entering next season. So I am keeping a close eye on Liddell and Washington. There's unfinished business. Ohio State got embarrassed. Got embarrassed by Oral Roberts. I mean, they just, you can't lose that game. They had that game. They lost it. And now there's going to be pressure. And I think that those two, if they can come back, the Buckeyes could be a pick. Like, they might be viewed as a dark horse nationally, but they shouldn't be. If those two are back, they should be viewed as a team that could make the Final Four. And it's time for them to do so in the Big Ten. They were playing real well at the end of last season. If you remember, they almost won the Big Ten title. And but then they fell apart against Oral Roberts. They lose that game. So I'm keeping a sharp eye on what Dwayne Washington and EJ Liddell do, because if they don't come back, Ohio State, they don't carry the same type of equipment. If they do come back, we're talking about them as a team that could win it all in New Orleans next April.
I would just keep it more in the Big Ten. I think if Hunter Dickinson comes back to Michigan, it puts Michigan in a great spot, and that'd be great for Juwan. I mean, to look at the Big Ten this season and look at how good the bigs were, like having a guy like Hunter Dickinson literally helped Michigan claw through the entire season. It didn't matter who they played, whether it was Luka Garza or whether it was Trevon Williams or in Purdue, whoever. It didn't matter. He literally took the challenge, and even when they lost a couple of their players toward the end of the year in the tournament, like at the end of the day, he kind of carried that team with his physicality, with his rebounding, with defensively changing shots, and just being a massive guy down in the paint. And I feel like having that guy come back better, with better touch, a better player, I can't foresee Michigan not being good or great, especially with the guys they have coming back.
Yeah, they have some really good freshmen coming in too. And they landed Devontae Jones, the point guard, the transfer from Coastal Carolina. It's Caleb Houston and Moussa Diabate, I think is how you pronounce his name, that are the headliners of that recruiting class. Staying in the Big Ten, I think the other guy that you have to mention in this conversation is Trevon Williams. Right, he's kind of the guy that Purdue built their offense around this year. His passing ability, his ability on the block. Like, there were games that he just willed Purdue to a win, scoring out of the post, and that doesn't happen in college basketball, right? Like, you don't win games by throwing the guy into the ball into the block and letting him go. But the one that specifically sticks out in my mind is, I think he had 27 in the second half as Purdue came back from 17 down to beat Michigan State on the road. So he's a very, very big time player. And if he's back and Jaden Ivey ends up taking the leap that a lot of us expect him to take, I think he averaged 18 over his last 6 games. He was really good in the tournament. If he takes a leap, you get Trevon Williams back. You got all these freshmen coming in from Purdue. Matt Painter is as good as anybody in college basketball at taking the pieces that he has and finding a way to turn them into a winning basketball team. And he's going to have some damn good pieces next season if Trevon Williams is back. Go ahead, Dave.
He played amazing toward the end of the season. I mean, like you were just mentioning, him being able to find people. Like that was one of the first things I noticed. Like when you watch him play, like his feel for the game when he catches the ball and he's like basically quarterbacking from the post. Like there's not many bigs that are doing the things that Trevon was doing toward the end of the year. So
yeah, Fanta, you got another one?
Well, I think that the obvious one is Johnny Juzang at UCLA, because if he comes back with Jaime Jaquez and what the Bruins have coming in as well, we're talking about a team that could get back to the Final Four. I will go, though, to the Big East, and I think that Julian Champagnie's decision is big. His brother Justin from Pitt going forward, going to the NBA. So what does Justin's twin Julian do? And for those thinking, well, come on, it's St. John's. I mean, like they're not a team that's, that really rings the net. Here's the thing, though. Posh Alexander is the real deal. He is the real deal. I mean, this kid, if you haven't seen him play yet, or you haven't watched a lot of Posh Alexander play for St. John's, he changed everything about that program last year. Julian Champagnie's a guy, he can average 20 for you. I mean, he's just a bucket. He's 6'8". He shoots the three. So he has the makeup of a guy that has a high ceiling. Does he forego another year of college? Look, it comes down to what he decides. I think he's leaning towards coming back to St. John's. And if Champagnie and Alexander we know is coming back. If Champagnie comes back with him, I think St. John's is a top 5 team in the Big East next season. If Champagnie does not come back, St. John's is 8 or 9 in the Big East next season. That's how big of a difference Julian Champagnie makes. And I think that Mike Anderson's team could be an NCAA tournament dark horse, a team that could make it next year that people might not think at the start of the season would make it. They were coming on last year. They just stumbled a couple of times against teams they shouldn't have stumbled against. If Champagnie's back, St. John's steals a bid that a Lenardi or a bracketologist doesn't have right now on their radar.
Yeah, they were also really young, and getting a little bit more experience is going to help. But I want to circle back to just mention Juzang again, because I think that if he is back, and we know Chris Smith is back to 100% from the torn ACL, I think I probably would have UCLA as the favorite to win the national title. I just think that trio of Jaime Jaquez, Johnny Juzang, and Chris Smith is as good of a wing trio as you're going to find. Tiger Campbell has proven his ability to be a winner, to be able to control a game, and to be able to facilitate. And Cody Riley is just, he's one of these guys you could dump the ball to on the block, and he's going to make the right decision. So I would really, really expect UCLA to have a chance to win a national title with Juzang back. Without him, I think it changes a lot because, I mean, look, we saw what he did in the tournament, right? Like you don't really need to elaborate on that. He's a bucket. He's a killer. So, I mean, without him, UCLA is going to be really good. With him, I think we're talking about like potentially getting back to the Final Four, having a chance to really to win it all. The other guy I wanted to mention was your guy, Deshaun, Miles McBride, because I was kind of expecting him to be someone that would seriously consider returning to school. I had a conversation the other day with someone about, maybe he could be a guy that could sneak into like the top 25 into the back end of the first round just because of his scoring ability, his ability off the bounce, what he really did down the stretch of the season. So I'm curious. I mean, you watched him probably as close as anybody. You know him better than either John or I do. What do you think about him as a pro? He did it again, Fanta.
I hit the button too beforehand. It didn't press. This is awesome. I'm embarrassing myself. No, I think he's a pro. When he first got there, like we talked about on this show 100 times, I didn't think he was a natural point guard. He was a really good off guard. Could shoot the ball in the mid range really well, and pretty good defender, but he couldn't really pass the ball too well, and he didn't really extend the defense with his jump shooting. Came back this season, worked on all those things, and then showed everybody he could do those things, as well as just raising his scoring average even more. I think he's a professional player in the NBA. I really do. It's just a matter of if those teams feel that he can be the point guard they want him to be. I mean, it really falls on which team picks him. Because if you put the ball in his hands, I feel like you can get something good. He can get anywhere he wants to as far as his own scoring ability. He's a great scorer in the mid-range. He's obviously showed his three-point shooting is gotten better, and his decision-making has gotten better. He has some lapses during the year with some of his decision-making, but for the most part, in comparison to his freshman year to this past year, it's not even close, night and day. He's shown that he can be a really good point guard. I just wonder how he stacks up against the other point guards in that top 25. You know, I would pick him because I know what kind of guy he is, but I just wonder what those teams see when it comes to McBride. So,
yeah, I think he's going to go in the draft. I do. I would if I were him. His stock has risen. It looks like he's going to be a first-round pick. Where that falls, we'll see. But if you think, you know, we haven't even hit the combine yet, he's only going to help himself there. Mm-hmm. I think Deuce McBride is an NBA draft first-round pick. And here's the thing. If you think that, and we all think that, then, man, go get paid. Yep. You go forward, go into the draft. Because there's no guarantees if you're a first-round pick next year. It's a really interesting case. Deshaun just said it best of what would other teams think of him. And it's always hard to project that point guard type of player in the league. Mm-hmm. You know, how much time are they getting? But I think Miles McBride fits the bill of today's NBA. What I like about him is, hey, everybody, the mid-range is back. The mid-range is back. The mid-range pull-up has come back like the Jersey Shore is revved up and open for business. That's the way that the mid-range has come back to the NBA. Miles McBride has a mid-range. He could stop on a dime, hit that shot. I like the way that he's evolved as a player. I think he gets selected this summer. It's unfortunate for Mountaineer fans. They'll be fine. Bob Huggins knows how to harvest and
just brought him in point guard. So
yeah, he'll be fine.
You know, you mentioned the mid-range. I do think it's important to note that he shot 41.4% from three on almost 4 attempts per game. He's a really good, off the dribble shooter. He also, his assist rate was double his turnover rate. I thought that once West Virginia made the change, once Big She transferred out and they really kind of opened things up, the reason why they became one of the most potent offenses in college basketball is because of Miles McBride's ability to kind of operate in that spaced floor, his ability to kind of get in the lane and find people, right? Their offense was basically, let's put a bunch of shooters out there. Let's put Miles McBride out there and let Derek Culver clean everything up in the paint. And it worked really, really well for a long time for West Virginia. I do want to mention 4 other people in the Big 12 before we get out of here. One of them is Remy Martin, who is he transferred out of Arizona State, has committed to Kansas. He's still in the draft, although I would probably expect him to come back. I don't like Remy is I don't think he's going to be drafted. I don't think he's a two-way guy. His decision in my mind basically comes down to, do I want to try to play overseas? Do I want to give it a shot at Kansas and on a more national stage? I think he'll be back. Jericho Sims at Texas is a guy that I think is kind of undervalued in the eyes of NBA draft folks. He's just, I mean, he's so good defensively and such a great athlete. He can't really do anything other than catch and dunk. But in an era where finding people that can protect the rim and be switchable is really, really valuable, he's a guy that can provide a lot of that value. And the last 2 are at Baylor. James Akinjo, I'm assuming he's going to be eligible, but he's one of these guys that's transferred twice. And so it's not exactly clear if he's going to be immediately eligible. As far as I know, the NCAA has not put down an official ruling on that. And then Matthew Meyer, who I think he'll probably be back. He's the kind of guy that I can see having a huge leap and becoming like a top 20 pick if he comes back. If he leaves now, he'll probably be drafted. He'll probably be on a contract somewhere. But I mean, when you're 6'9" and you can score the way that he can score, I think that he needs to come back, be the star of this team, show you're better defensively than you were last year. Boom, first round pick. That's where I'm at with it.
I like those last 2.
I got two briefly sticking in New Jersey, Rutgers, Geo Baker and Ron Harper. I mean, at the end of the day, those two players were part of the equation for Rutgers. Rutgers should have been in the Sweet 16. It is a massive collapse that they had to Houston. Rutgers should have not lost that game. Guess what? They did. Close only counts in horseshoes. And for Harper and Baker, if they come back, Rutgers is a solid Big Ten team. If Harper and Baker do not come back, Rutgers is a doormat Big Ten team again. They're going to be at the bottom of the league or close to it anyway. So that's something I'm looking at too, because we talk about the depth of the Big Ten. It was such a big strength for the league last year. If you have to factor Rutgers in there and you play them twice in the season, if you have to go to the rack and Harper and Baker are going, Rutgers could hang their heads. What I always look at in college basketball is, for a conference, who are those teams that sometimes are fringe tournament teams that end up stealing a bid, giving that league a unit, and then having a chance in an 8, 9, 7, 10 game? Potentially Rutgers, if they have Harper and Baker back, that could be an interesting pair. And I couldn't agree with you more on Matthew Meyer, because I think he's a lot better than his numbers he can show.
Honestly, it's not even close. Like, I'm not gonna say that they won because of him, but you can watch. We watched the last game they played. Man, you can't not guard him, and he's just so skilled that, I mean, at that position at the 4-5, like there was nothing anyone could do with him regardless of where he was at. Like he's a talented dude.